Welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about media queries. As you saw in the first video, flexible grids and flexible images using percentages and ems versus pixels can only take us so far. So what came with CSS3 was this notion of media queries. And in this video, we're going to talk about how to use them and what they are and how they affect things. So as I mentioned, despite the flexible grids and flexible images, our site can still break down as it reshapes to fit different screen or device sizes. So as you move from a desktop or monitor down to a tablet, down to a smartphone, and also smartphone and tablets depending on their orientation, there could still be a breakdown even with those flexible grids and images. We're going to follow through some examples as to why we then need media queries. For example, in this particular site, we have shrunk down the screen size to the point that our images are becoming clipped. They no longer can size down to what we need to see, so we have no idea what this image actually is, other than I can tell you it's a chunk of a robot. It's like the shoulder and the neck and part of its head. We've also completely lost a headline that was originally on this page. The headline had been along the bottom of the image, but because it hasn't scaled properly, based on just simply using flexible grids, we've lost it altogether. So if this is what you saw on a tablet, it's not going to tell you a whole lot. And just as an FYI, I have a note at the bottom of the slide. You'll see these are from Ethan Marcote's companion website called Robot or Not, or Bot or Not, that goes along with his book Responsive Web Design, which I highly recommend if you can spare about the $10 that you can get for the online version, or about $15 to $20 if you want the printed version. I highly recommend it. It's an incredibly useful book. It's a very short book that just details how we get through responsive design. So this is the first thing that we're seeing, is that our images become clipped, we lose our headline, and if we shrink it a little bit further, our primary navigation menu starts to slide into a second row. So you can see where Contact Us has now slid to a second row. The main image is completely useless. It's still there, but it makes absolutely no sense. It provides no level of context for us within relation to this website. Below that, there are columns, and they are getting ridiculously skinny, to the point that reading them is challenging. The column on the right-hand side, some of the text is moving closer and closer to the edges, and the text is just difficult to read. On a different part of that website, you're going to see that it also, as we get it smaller, some of the things become very disproportionate. So the text in where it says probably bots, which is a headline, becomes disproportionately large. Even though we are now using ems, we still probably need to make some adjustments. Likewise, margins and padding no longer make sense, even though we're using percentages to help adjust those widths on our left and right padding and margins. We're also still using pixels for the top and bottom margins and padding, and either way, this is becoming very disproportionate. So what happens is our flexible grid that was so awesome on a lot of the larger screen sizes has actually become a liability and is rather painful when we go beyond the resolution in which the original website was coded for, which is typically still going to be your laptop or desktop. We've probably heard the term mobile first, which is the idea of thinking about what your layout's going to look like in a mobile environment at the same time that you're developing for a traditional layout, which has, as a result, changed what web design, the actual physical designs of what websites look like, because people are considering that ability to use media queries, which is what's coming up next. Because what's a designer to do as our flexible grids and images start to break down? This is when CSS started to move towards responsiveness. The World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C as it's known, created what's called media types. There were all sorts of media types that were recognized, acknowledging that there are different forms of ways that people can actually use, or media that people can access websites. So you're going to recognize that there are some like all, handheld, projection, and screen, because these are all trying to accommodate for different size screens. Oh, and the last one, TV. Different sizes of screens that users might be accessing web pages with. But the problem is you had to create actual different style sheets to accommodate the different types of media that was working to appeal to different devices. So while it was a step in the right direction, and many websites to this day that haven't fully integrated, you can see links to external style sheets that are referencing these different media types. And here are a few examples of what you might see on some of those pages. So it still is the link using the rel as style sheet. All of them are style sheets. And then they are all going to have different names. For example, global.css is media equals all, meaning it is really trying to accommodate styles for all screen sizes. But then you're going to have main, and that's going to override it because then, or override at least some of the styles, because now it's looking at media type screen, and then you're going to have paper as if you're intending to print out this page. This is a bit clunky, but it's getting us closer to what we need to accommodate for the mobile revolution. Because as smartphones came out, which nobody predicted the wide use of mobile, it really threw everything out of whack. Because up until then, we were really just programming for different types of monitors used on laptops and working with desktops, possibly TVs, or projection. But other than that, nobody anticipated the widespread use of mobile devices. That's when CS3 came out and introduced us to what is called the media query. What it is it eliminates the need for those different media types that we just saw previously. And what it does is it helps identify different types of media and inspects the physical characteristics of a device, and then you can code CSS specifically designed for devices or screen sizes that meet that criteria. In the example that's shown on this page, you'll see what a media query looks like. This example says, so for @media, that's how they all start, screen, so meaning that it's for a screen with a minimum width of 1024 pixels, meaning for any screens that are 1024 pixels or larger, use this particular code that's held within. And you will even notice, if you use Dreamweaver in particular, you will see that media queries tend to color code the opening including the opening curly brackets and the closing curly brackets. But then within that, you almost treat it like it's its own separate style sheet. The difference is you only code the CSS styles that need to be changed. Otherwise, it will inherit what's in the main style sheet. That's what makes this so awesome. So the anatomy of the media query, which I kind of indicated. The first thing is that it begins with a media type, and that would be the screen. Or you can use all, which means that it will any sort of device that meets the criteria that you have in the query. So that's where it's saying it's in the media type of screen, and then it's followed by the query, which is what is in parentheses. In this case, again, it's saying looking for screens that have a minimum width of 1024 pixels. Other features that you can include within the query are height, device width, device height, orientation. Orientation is a really important one. Orientation indicates whether it's being held in portrait or landscape. Aspect ratio, so is it 3:4, which is the traditional older televisions, or is it 16:9, or is it a particular aspect ratio for a given device? The color of the device, the resolution of the screen, and more. And I'm not going to go into all the details of these. You can look these all up on W3 Schools, and it'll go into more detail on what these additional pieces are. But I'm just going to bounce back a screen. And this is what would go in between where it says min width colon 1024px. Then you could put in an additional query, including one of those other descriptors. For the exercises we're doing in class, we're really just going to be looking at screen widths. That's why I'm not going to go through all of these because, again, we're only taking a couple weeks to go over media queries and responsive web design. So I just want you to become at least familiar with what these are, and then we'll practice using some other features in building web pages that are flexible and make use of media queries. In the next video, I'm going to take you through an exercise that'll help prepare you for the lab for this week. Thank you.